An Essay on Man. An Introduction to a Philosophy of Human Culture by Ernst Cassirer, quotes. An Essay on Man by Ernst Cassirer explores the unique capabilities of human beings through the lens of symbolic thought and cultural development. The book is an introduction to the philosophy of human culture, emphasizing the symbolic nature of human experience. Cassirer argues that humans are distinguished not by reason alone, but by their ability to create and use symbols through language, art, myth, and science. This capacity allows humans to transcend their immediate environment, giving them access to a broader, more meaningful existence. Originally published in 1944, the work synthesizes the themes developed in Cassirer's earlier volumes on the philosophy of symbolic forms, providing an accessible overview of his ideas and inviting readers to reflect on what it means to be human. Quote 1. Reality is not a unique and homogeneous thing. It is immensely diversified, having as many different schemes and patterns as there are different organisms. Here, Wexkull proposes a view of reality that is inherently subjective and varied, tailored to the sensory and perceptual capabilities of different species. This concept introduces the idea that each organism experiences its own version of reality, which significantly diverges from the notion of a single, objective reality that is the same for all beings. Quote 2. No longer in a merely physical universe, man lives in a symbolic universe. Wexkull's observation here marks a significant departure in understanding human existence. Unlike other species that interact directly with their physical surroundings, humans engage with the world through symbols such as language, art, and religion, which mediate their experience and understanding of reality. This transition to a symbolic realm introduces complexities in human perception and cognition that are absent in other animals. Quote 3. Biology, according to Wexkull, is a natural science which has to be developed by the usual empirical methods, the methods of observation and experimentation. This quote encapsulates Johannes von Wexkull's perspective on biology as a discipline reliant on empirical methodologies. Wexkull emphasizes that biological studies must adhere to systematic observation and experimentation, distinguishing it from theoretical sciences that might depend more heavily on abstract reasoning or speculative models. Quote 4. Life is an ultimate and self-dependent reality. It cannot be described or explained in terms of physics or chemistry. This quote reflects Wexkull's vitalist viewpoint, which argues that life possesses a fundamental quality that physics and chemistry cannot fully capture. By asserting life's autonomy, Wexkull challenges the reductionist approach that seeks to explain biological phenomena solely through physical or chemical processes, suggesting instead that life should be viewed through a unique, perhaps even spiritual, lens. Quote 5. Every organism, even the lowest, is not only in a vague sense adapted to, but entirely fitted into its environment. This quote emphasizes Wexkull's belief in the perfect adaptation of organisms to their environments, suggesting that every creature, regardless of its complexity, is intricately integrated into its surroundings. This view underlines a harmonious relationship between an organism and its habitat, where each species is optimally equipped to survive and thrive within its specific ecological niche. Quote 6. By so doing, we can designate his specific difference, and we can understand the new way open to man, the way to civilization. This final quote concludes that by recognizing humans as symbolic creatures, we can better appreciate the distinct pathways through which humanity has progressed toward complex societal structures and cultural developments. The symbolic capacity not only differentiates humans from other animals, but also serves as the driving force behind the advancement of civilizations. Quote 7. Space and time are the framework in which all reality is concerned. We cannot conceive any real thing except under the conditions of space and time. This quote emphasizes the fundamental role that space and time play as the universal framework for all forms of existence. In this view, no object or phenomenon can be fully understood or conceptualized outside the dimensions of space and time, highlighting their integral role in shaping our perception of reality. Quote 8. In mythical thought, space and time are never considered as pure or empty forms. They are regarded as the great mysterious forces which govern all things, which rule and determine not only our mortal life, but also the life of the gods. Here, the quote reflects how space and time are perceived not just as physical dimensions but as powerful and almost divine entities in mythical thought. These forces are imbued with the power to influence and control both the natural world and the divine realm, indicating their perceived omnipotence across various cultures and mythologies. Quote 9. The first thing that becomes clear by such an analysis is that there are fundamentally different types of spatial and temporal experience. Not all the forms of this experience are on the same level. This statement highlights the complexity and variety of human experiences of space and time, suggesting a hierarchy or stratification in how these dimensions are perceived and understood. It points to the evolutionary development of spatial and temporal cognition, which varies significantly across different forms of life and levels of consciousness. Quote 10. A child has to learn many skills which the animal was born with, but for this deficiency, man is compensated by another gift, which he alone develops, and which bears no analogy to anything in organic nature. The quote contrasts the inherent abilities of animals with the learned skills of humans, underscoring the unique human capacity to develop abstract concepts, such as symbolic thought. This ability, though it requires a learning process absent in animals who operate more on instinct, offers humans a distinct advantage in manipulating and understanding their environment in complex ways. Quote 11. The greatest difficulties have from the first been encountered by the philosophers themselves in accounting for and describing the real nature of abstract or symbolic space. This excerpt reflects the intellectual challenge that abstract concepts of space have posed to thinkers throughout history. Philosophers have struggled to define and articulate the nature of a space that transcends physical reality, grappling with its implications for understanding the universe and the very fabric of existence. Quote 12. Memory as a simple reproduction of a former event occurs also in the life of the higher animals. To what degree it depends on ideational processes comparable to those we find in man is a difficult and much controverted problem. This quote discusses the complex nature of memory, which in humans involves not only the recall of past events, but also their reconfiguration and integration into current contexts. This higher-level processing of memory, involving abstract and symbolic thinking, sets human memory apart from the simpler, more direct forms of recall observed in animals. Quote 13. It was a turning point in Greek culture and Greek thought when Plato interpreted the maxim, "Know thyself," in an entirely new sense. This quote highlights a pivotal moment in the intellectual history of ancient Greece, marking Plato's reinterpretation of the Delphic maxim, "Know thyself." Plato's approach shifted the focus from individual self-awareness, as emphasized by Socrates, to a broader understanding of human nature through the study of societal structures like the state. This redefinition expanded the scope of philosophical inquiry into the nature of humanity, emphasizing the social and political dimensions of human existence. Quote 14. Human nature, according to Plato, is like a difficult text, the meaning of which has to be deciphered by philosophy. Plato likens human nature to a complex text that philosophy must interpret, suggesting that understanding humanity requires deep and systematic contemplation. This metaphor underscores the idea that human behaviors and motivations are intricate and layered, necessitating a philosophical approach to fully comprehend their meanings and implications. Quote 15. In modern philosophy, Kant was one of the first to approach this problem, and to formulate it in a clear and systematic way. This quote notes Auguste Comte's significant contribution to modern philosophical thought, particularly in framing the study of humanity within a sociological context. Kant emphasized the importance of viewing individuals not in isolation, but as part of a broader human collective, which he termed humanity. His approach marked a departure from individualistic interpretations towards a more collective understanding of human behaviors and social structures. Quote 16. Kant attacks the psychologism of his age. Kant's critique of psychologism reflects his opposition to the reduction of philosophical issues, particularly those related to human nature, to psychological phenomena alone. He argued for a sociological approach that considers the broader social dynamics influencing human behavior, thereby challenging the prevailing focus on individual psychological processes. Quote 17. Social phenomena are subject to the same rules as physical phenomena, yet they are of a different and much more complicated character. This quote from Kant articulates the complexity of social phenomena, which, while governed by natural laws similar to those in the physical sciences, exhibit a greater complexity due to the dynamic interplay of individual and collective human actions. Kant's perspective underscores the necessity for a distinct scientific approach to study societal structures and their influence on human behavior. Quote 18. To know yourself, says Kant, know history. Here, Kant emphasizes the importance of historical context in understanding oneself and humanity at large. This perspective argues that individual and collective identities are deeply influenced by historical events and conditions, suggesting that a thorough understanding of history is essential for a comprehensive grasp of human nature. Quote 19. Religion shows us that there is a double man, the man before and after the fall. Man was destined for the highest goal, but he forfeited his position. This quote discusses the religious perspective on human nature, emphasizing the transformative effect of the fall from grace on humanity's moral and existential status. In religious narratives, particularly within Christian theology, the fall represents a pivotal event that altered human nature, leading to a loss of innocence and purity. This perspective views human history and behavior through the lens of redemption and moral struggle, highlighting the dual nature of humanity as both noble and flawed. Quote 20. Religion cannot offer such a solution. By its adversaries, religion has always been accused of darkness and incomprehensibility. This statement acknowledges the criticisms often directed at religion regarding its approach to explaining human nature and the universe. Religion embraces mystery and the unknowable aspects of human existence, focusing on faith and divine revelation rather than empirical or rational explanations. This approach is seen as both a strength and a limitation, as it deepens the sense of mystery and acknowledges the limits of human understanding, but also resists clear, rational scrutiny. Quote 21. What we learn from Pascal's example is that, at the beginning of modern times, the old problem was still felt in its full strength. The quote reflects on the influence of Blaise Pascal, a pivotal figure in the transition from medieval to modern philosophical thought. Pascal grappled with the enduring philosophical question of human nature and the role of humanity in the universe, especially in light of new scientific discoveries that challenged traditional beliefs. His work exemplifies the ongoing struggle to reconcile scientific knowledge with religious and philosophical perspectives. Quote 22. The quest now is for a general theory of man, based on empirical observations and on general logical principles. This quote captures a significant shift in the study of humanity, from philosophical speculation to empirical science and logic. It marks a transition towards seeking a more scientifically robust and observationally supported understanding of human nature, emphasizing the need for a systematic approach that integrates new scientific methodologies with philosophical inquiry. Quote 23. The superiority of mathematics in the realm of science is no longer uncontested. Diderot's critique reflects a growing sentiment during the Enlightenment that while mathematics had greatly advanced our understanding of the natural world, it might have reached its limits in terms of contributing to new discoveries. This skepticism anticipated a shift towards more empirical and experimental methods in science, suggesting that other disciplines might rise in importance as mathematics' dominant position was reevaluated. Quote 24. In no other period of human knowledge has man ever become more problematic to himself than in our own days. Max Scheler's observation highlights the increasing complexity and fragmentation of human self-understanding in the modern era. Despite the proliferation of knowledge and the specialization of sciences that study human nature, there remains a lack of coherence and unity in our understanding of ourselves. Scheler points out the paradox of increasing knowledge coinciding with increasing uncertainty about fundamental aspects of human identity and existence. Quote 25. In his critique of judgment, Kant raises the question whether it is possible to discover a general criterion by which we may describe the fundamental structure of the human intellect and distinguish this structure from all other possible modes of knowing. Kant's exploration in the Critique of Judgment addresses the unique capabilities and limitations of human intellect. He suggests that human knowledge is distinct in its ability to differentiate between what is real and what is possible, a trait not found in either less complex beings or in the divine intellect. This distinction is crucial for understanding human cognition and its epistemological underpinnings. Quote 26. Human knowledge is by its very nature symbolic knowledge. This statement encapsulates the essence of human cognition as inherently symbolic, setting it apart from the literal or direct forms of knowledge that might characterize other forms of intelligence. Symbolic thinking enables humans to use signs and representations to communicate and understand concepts that are not immediately present or tangible, facilitating abstract and creative thought. Quote 27. In cases of aphasia, it has very often been found that the patients had not only lost the use of special classes of words, but at the same time exhibited a curious deficiency in their general intellectual attitude. The connection between language impairment in aphasia and broader cognitive difficulties highlights the deep integration of language and thought. This example illustrates how language is not just a communication tool, but fundamentally shapes how we perceive and interact with the world, affecting our ability to conceive of possibilities beyond the immediate reality. Quote 28. The facts of science always imply a theoretical, which means a symbolic, element. This quote points out that scientific facts are not merely empirical observations, but are also shaped by the theoretical frameworks within which they are understood. The notion challenges the purely empirical view of science and underscores the role of human interpretation and symbolic representation in shaping scientific knowledge. Quote 29. All the great ethical thinkers did not think in terms of mere actuality. Their ideas cannot advance a single step without enlarging and even transcending the limits of the actual world. Ethical thought, according to great philosophers, inherently involves transcending the present reality to envision better possibilities. This pursuit is driven by imagination and ideals, suggesting that ethical reasoning is as much about what could be as it is about what is, emphasizing the role of ideals in guiding human behavior and societal norms. Quote 30. Of all the phenomena of human culture, myth and religion are most refractory to a merely logical analysis. This quote acknowledges the complex nature of myth and religion, which resist straightforward logical analysis due to their deep-rooted emotional and cultural significances. Myth often seems chaotic and without reason, and religion, while not inherently irrational, transcends pure rationality by dealing with the supernatural and the mysteries of faith. This complexity makes them unique fields of study within human culture, where the distinction between the conceivable and the inconceivable blurs. Quote 31. The myth-making function does not lack a real homogeneity. Despite the vast diversity in mythological stories and figures across cultures, there exists a fundamental uniformity in the function of myth-making among humans. This universality suggests that all humans, regardless of cultural or geographical differences, use myth to negotiate and understand their world, demonstrating a shared cognitive framework across humanity. Quote 32. Primitive religion is perhaps the strongest and most energetic affirmation of life that we find in human culture. This statement highlights the role of primitive religion as a profound affirmation of life, often expressing a vehement denial of death. This outlook reflects a broader, more elemental view of existence, where death is not accepted as a natural conclusion, but rather as a condition to be overcome or denied through cultural and religious practices. Such beliefs underscore the deep-seated human desire for continuity and permanence in the face of life's transience. Quote 33. A philosophy of human culture does not ask the same question as a metaphysical or theological system. Here, the focus is on differentiating the study of human culture from the study of metaphysics or theology. While theology might seek to understand divine truths, a philosophy of human culture aims to understand the forms and structures of human expression, such as myth and religion. This involves examining how humans use symbols and narratives to make sense of the world, rather than seeking to understand the metaphysical truths those symbols might represent. Quote 34. Myth combines a theoretical element and an element of artistic creation. Myth is described as a fusion of theory and artistry, reflecting both a conceptual framework and a creative expression. This dual nature of myth allows it to convey complex cultural and existential truths in a form that is both intellectually stimulating and emotionally resonant, engaging the mind and the senses in a way that straightforward narrative or exposition cannot. Quote 35. They are concrete beings, but they are concrete in their actions, not in their personal appearance or existence. This quote discusses the concept of functional gods in Roman religion, emphasizing that these deities were recognized more for their roles and functions rather than as personal entities with distinct identities. This distinction highlights the pragmatic and systematic nature of Roman religious belief, where gods were akin to administrators or guardians of specific aspects of daily life, each overseeing a distinct domain of human activity. Quote 36. These gods arose from piety toward ancestors. This passage refers to the deep-rooted tradition of ancestor worship in Roman households, where the household gods, or demons, were revered not as individual personalities, but as collective spirits of ancestors protecting the family. This form of worship underscores the strong familial and communal bonds in Roman culture, which significantly influenced their religious practices and the way deities were conceptualized and honored. Quote 37. The first necessary step was to find a line of demarcation that separated the holy sphere from the unclean or the uncanny. This quote outlines a critical shift in religious thought, where distinctions were made between what was considered holy and what was not, moving away from the ambiguous and often indistinguishable conceptions of purity and danger in earlier religious practices. This development marked a significant evolution in religious thought, focusing on defining and understanding the sacred as separate from the profane or perilous, which allowed for more structured and coherent religious systems. Quote 38. Every magical art needs the highest attention. If it is not performed in the right order, and according to the same invariable rules, it fails of its effect. The quote reflects on the meticulous nature of magical practices, emphasizing that success in magic depends on precise adherence to established rituals. This requirement for precision and order in magical practices illustrates the underlying belief in a structured universe where specific actions can influence outcomes, provided they are executed correctly. This belief bridges the practical and mystical aspects of human culture, suggesting a complex understanding of causality and influence in the pre-scientific world. Quote 39. It was no moral tendency which created the Homeric gods. This statement critiques the nature of the gods in Homeric poems, noting that these deities were not embodiments of moral ideals, but rather projections of human traits and emotions. Unlike deities in other religious traditions that might represent ethical principles or virtues, the Homeric gods are portrayed with human-like flaws and behaviors, reflecting the complexities and contradictions of human nature rather than idealized divine qualities. This approach to divinity offers a more relatable and nuanced exploration of the divine, emphasizing the anthropomorphic tendencies of early Greek religious thought. Quote 40. Language and myth are near of kin. In the early stages of human culture, their relation is so close and their cooperation so obvious that it is almost impossible to separate the one from the other. This quote highlights the deep interconnectedness of language and myth within human culture, emphasizing that both serve as foundational aspects of human expression and cognition. Language and myth emerge from the same creative impulse, serving not only as tools for communication, but also as means to structure and interpret the world around us, reflecting the collective ethos and beliefs of societies. Quote 41. Ancient language is a difficult instrument to handle, particularly for religious purposes. It is impossible in human language to express abstract ideas except by metaphor, and it is not too much to say that the whole dictionary of ancient religion is made up of metaphors. Here, the focus is on the inherent challenges in using ancient languages for expressing complex, abstract religious ideas. The reliance on metaphors in these languages points to a fundamental limitation, but also a profound capacity to convey deep truths and concepts through rich, symbolic expressions. This approach not only communicates ideas, but also engages the imagination and emotions of the listener, enriching the cultural and spiritual life of a community. Quote 42. Both are based on a very general and very early experience of mankind, an experience of a social rather than of a physical nature. This statement underscores that both myth and language stem from a fundamentally social experience, reflecting the communal nature of human existence. They evolve from the interactions and relationships within a community, serving as tools that not only communicate, but also reinforce social bonds and shared values. By framing human experience in stories and language, societies can perpetuate their heritage, morals, and worldview across generations. Quote 43. The word is no longer endowed with mysterious powers. It no longer has an immediate physical or supernatural influence. This quote marks a significant shift in the perception of language from a magical to a semantic tool. The transition reflects a deeper understanding of language's role in human thought and communication, highlighting its power to convey meaning and information rather than affect physical changes in the world. This evolution in thinking about language illustrates a broader intellectual advancement, recognizing the importance of rational and logical communication in human societies. Quote 44. Primitive man feels himself surrounded by all sorts of visible and invisible dangers. He cannot hope to overcome these dangers by merely physical means. The quote captures the psychological and existential state of primitive man, who perceived the world as a place filled with both seen and unseen threats. Language, in this context, becomes a crucial tool not just for survival through communication, but also as a means to assert control or seek protection through incantations or appeals to the supernatural. This reflects an early understanding of the power of words to influence the environment and the forces within it, a testament to the deep-rooted human belief in the potency of spoken language. Quote 45. Modern historical linguistics began with an investigation of uniform phonetic correspondences. This quote emphasizes the origins of modern historical linguistics, which began by studying how consistent phonetic patterns across languages could reveal their historical and evolutionary relationships. This approach was foundational in understanding the systematic and regular nature of sound changes, which in turn helped linguists reconstruct the history of languages and their interconnections. Quote 46. The phenomena of phonetic change appeared to prove the existence of such laws. Here the focus is on the shift in linguistic studies during the 19th century towards a more scientific approach, where linguists began to treat language changes as lawful and systematic, much like phenomena studied in the natural sciences. This perspective helped to elevate the study of linguistics to the rigor of scientific disciplines, asserting that phonetic changes follow predictable patterns that can be empirically analyzed and documented. Quote 47. Language is not simply an aggregate of sounds and words. It is a system. This statement underlines a fundamental shift in the understanding of language from a collection of individual elements to a structured system where elements are interdependent and functionally related. This systemic view acknowledges that linguistic elements gain meaning and function only in relation to each other within the broader structure of the language. Quote 48. Every individual idiom has a structure of its own, both in a formal and in a material sense. This quote acknowledges the unique structural identity of each language, highlighting that every language develops its own systems of sounds, phonemes, and grammar, morphology, and syntax that distinguish it from others. This individuality and structure reflects not only linguistic diversity, but also the adaptability of language to the cultural and communicative needs of its speakers. Quote 49. It is in just this principle that the difference lies between the new phonology and former types of phonetics. The focus here is on the evolution of linguistic thought from phonetics, which studied sounds as mere physical phenomena, to phonology, which considers sounds as functional units within a language. This shift emphasizes understanding how sounds contribute to meaning in language rather than just their acoustic or articulatory properties, aligning more closely with how languages use sounds to differentiate meaning among words or grammatical forms. Quote 50. Beauty appears to be one of the most clearly known of human phenomena. Unobscured by any aura of secrecy and mystery, its character and nature stand in no need of subtle and complicated metaphysical theories for their explanation. This quote reflects on the apparent simplicity and directness with which beauty presents itself in human experience, suggesting that beauty is an immediate and unmistakable aspect of life that does not require deep philosophical or theoretical analysis to be understood and appreciated. This perception challenges the often complex philosophical discussions about the nature of beauty, positioning it as a fundamental, easily accessible part of human life. Quote 51. Kant, in his Critique of Judgment, was the first to give a clear and convincing proof of the autonomy of art. Here, the emphasis is on Immanuel Kant's significant contribution to the philosophy of art, particularly his argument for art's autonomy, which asserts that art operates according to its own principles and should not be subordinated to or understood solely through the lenses of theoretical knowledge or morality. This marked a pivotal shift in aesthetic theory, recognizing art as an independent realm of human activity with its own intrinsic value and logic. Quote 52. Language and art are constantly oscillating between two opposite poles, an objective and a subjective pole. This quote captures the dynamic tension within language and art as they balance between representing the external world objectively and expressing individual subjective experiences. This oscillation highlights the dual capacity of both language and art to mirror reality and at the same time reinterpret it through personal perspectives, underscoring their complex roles in human communication and expression. Quote 53. Imitation is a fundamental instinct, an irreducible fact of human nature. Aristotle's perspective on imitation as an innate human tendency underscores the idea that both language and art originate from a basic human drive to replicate and represent the world. This notion frames imitation not only as a source of learning, but also as a source of pleasure, suggesting that the enjoyment derived from art partly stems from its ability to faithfully reproduce the world, making the familiar anew. Quote 54. Art is not a description or reproduction of the empirical world, but an overflow of emotions and passions. This quote reflects Jean-Jacques Rousseau's radical departure from classical and neoclassical theories of art, which typically viewed art as a mimicry of nature. Instead, Rousseau posits that art primarily serves as a medium for expressing intense emotions and passions, highlighting its role in conveying the depth of human experience rather than just mirroring physical reality. This shift prioritizes the expressive power of art over its representational accuracy. Quote 55. To give aesthetic form to our passions is to transform them into a free and active state. This quote highlights the transformative power of art, which takes human passions and emotions and refines them into something beautiful and expressive. The process of creating art involves more than just displaying emotions. It actively reshapes these emotions into a form that can be appreciated and experienced on a different level, allowing both the creator and the audience to engage with these emotions in a new and liberating way. Quote 56. Art must always give us motion rather than mere emotion. Here, the distinction between motion and emotion in art is emphasized, suggesting that art should not only evoke feelings, but also provoke a dynamic response that stirs thoughts, perspectives, and perhaps even actions. Art's value lies not just in the emotions it can generate, but in its ability to move people, to stimulate a deeper engagement with life and its complexities. Quote 57. The attempt to characterize a work of art by some particular emotional feature must, therefore, inevitably fail to do it justice. This quote argues against reducing a work of art to a single emotional dimension, asserting that art encompasses a broader and more complex range of human experiences and expressions. Trying to define art by one prevailing emotion oversimplifies and undermines the richness and multiplicity of meanings that art conveys, overlooking the nuanced interplay of feelings and ideas that give a piece its depth and resonance. Quote 58. Comic art possesses in the highest degree that faculty shared by all art, sympathetic vision. This emphasizes the unique ability of comic art to present human life and its absurdities with a sympathetic lens, allowing viewers to engage with life's follies in a way that is both critical and compassionate. Comic art, through its humor and satirical edge, offers a reflection on human nature that is deeply insightful yet forgiving, illustrating the shared human experience in a manner that is enlightening and liberating. Quote 59. Delight in forms is quite different from delight in things or sense impressions. Forms cannot simply be impressed on our minds. We must produce them in order to feel their beauty. This quote underscores the unique nature of aesthetic appreciation, which differs fundamentally from simple sensory pleasure. Appreciating art requires an active engagement in the creation of forms, not just a passive reception. The experience of beauty in art involves understanding and appreciating the form and structure that the artist has crafted, highlighting the creative and active role of the observer in the aesthetic experience. Quote 60. It is a common flaw of all the ancient and modern systems of aesthetic hedonism that they offer us a psychological theory of aesthetic pleasure, which completely fails to account for the fundamental fact of aesthetic creativeness. This statement criticizes aesthetic hedonism for its focus solely on the pleasure derived from art, arguing that it neglects the essential aspect of creativity in art. Aesthetic pleasure is not just about experiencing joy from art. It involves a deeper understanding of how art transforms basic materials into complex expressions of human thought and emotion. This transformation, or creativeness, is crucial to truly appreciating what art is and what it offers beyond mere enjoyment. Quote 61. A great painter or musician is not characterized by his sensitiveness to color or sounds, but by his power to elicit from his static material a dynamic life of forms. Highlighting the transformative ability of artists, this quote illustrates that the essence of great art lies not in the simple perception of sensory elements like color or sound, but in the artist's ability to animate these elements into a dynamic and living form. This ability separates mere craftsmen from true artists, as it involves a deep creative manipulation of media to produce works that resonate with vitality and depth. Quote 62. We cannot understand a work of art without, to a certain degree, repeating and reconstructing the creative process by which it has come into being. Art requires active engagement from its viewers or listeners, demanding that they not only observe, but also mentally engage in the creative process that led to the work's creation. This engagement allows the audience to experience not just the final product, but the artistic journey itself, deepening their understanding and appreciation of the work. Quote 63. Nature is a thing, a great thing. that is composed of many lesser things. Now, whatever be the differences between things, they all have one basic feature in common, which consists simply in the fact that things are, they have their being. This quote delves into the philosophical examination of nature's essence, asserting that all things, regardless of their diversity, share the fundamental characteristic of existence. This perspective suggests a uniformity underlying the apparent multiplicity of forms and functions in the natural world, reflecting a classic ontological view where being itself is the foundational attribute shared by all entities. Quote 64. Today we know that all the marvels of the natural sciences, inexhaustible though they be in principle, must always come to a full stop before the strange reality of human life. Why? If all things have given up a large part of their secret to physical science, why does this alone hold out so stoutly? This passage highlights the unique complexity and mystery of human life that resists reduction to mere physical or biological explanations. It points out the limitations of the natural sciences in comprehending the full breadth of human experience, suggesting that human existence might defy the straightforward categorization and analysis that apply to other natural phenomena. Quote 65. Man has no nature. What he has is history. This profound assertion challenges the traditional view of a fixed human nature, and instead posits that what defines humanity is an accumulation of historical experiences. Unlike natural objects, which may have unchanging essences, humans are shaped by their past interactions, cultures, and decisions, making history a key component of understanding human life. Quote 66. In order to speak of man's being, we must first elaborate a non-Eleatic concept of being, as others have elaborated a non-Euclidean geometry. Here, the need for a new conceptual framework to understand human existence is emphasized, drawing an analogy with the revolutionary development of non-Euclidean geometry. Just as geometry was fundamentally transformed by stepping beyond traditional Euclidean concepts, understanding human beings may require a radical rethinking of what it means to exist. Quote 67. The time has come for the seed sown by Heraclitus to bring forth its mighty harvest. This statement evokes the philosophical heritage of Heraclitus, known for his doctrine that everything is in flux. It suggests that contemporary thought is ripe for embracing and developing the ideas of constant change and becoming, particularly in understanding human life, which cannot be captured by static concepts of being. Quote 68. The actual history of Antony and Cleopatra is one of the most tragic episodes of a struggle that lacerated the Roman Empire for 4 centuries until it finally destroyed it, the struggle between the Orient and Occident. This quote emphasizes the historical significance of the relationship between Antony and Cleopatra, not merely as a romantic episode, but as a pivotal event in the centuries-long geopolitical conflict between the eastern and western parts of the Roman Empire. This broader perspective situates their story within the significant historical theme of cultural and political tensions that shaped the empire's destiny. Quote 69. Antony's flight from the battle, declares Ferrero, was by no means induced by fear, nor was it an act of blind and passionate love. It was a political act carefully thought out beforehand. Here, the traditional narrative of Antony's actions driven by love or cowardice is challenged, proposing instead that his decisions were strategic and politically motivated. This reinterpretation invites a deeper understanding of Antony as a figure not just swayed by personal emotions, but engaged in complex political maneuvering, reflecting a more nuanced view of historical figures and their actions. Quote 70. With the obstinacy, the certainty, and the vehemence of an ambitious woman, of a confident and self-willed queen, Cleopatra strove to persuade the triumvir to fall back upon Egypt by sea. This quote highlights Cleopatra's active role in political strategy, portraying her not just as a passive figure in Antony's story, but as a determined leader with her own ambitions and plans. It sheds light on her agency and influence, challenging simpler narratives that portray her primarily as a romantic or tragic figure. Quote 71. In physics, the facts are explained when we succeed in arranging them in a threefold serial order, in the order of space, time, cause, and effect. This passage contrasts the methodologies of physics and history, indicating that while physics seeks to explain phenomena through measurable and observable sequences, history deals with the complexities of human actions and motivations that require a different approach for understanding. Quote 72. Yet an understanding of human life is the general theme and the ultimate aim of historical knowledge. This quote captures the essence of historical study, which seeks not just to record events, but to understand the human experiences behind them. It emphasizes that history is about connecting with the lives and motivations of people in the past, reconstructing their experiences to gain insights into the human condition. Quote 73. Let us make the past present. In order to judge of a thing, it must be before us. There is no experience in respect of what is absent. This quote highlights the challenge of historical understanding, emphasizing the need to reconstruct past events and lives vividly and accurately to truly comprehend them. It suggests that, to understand historical figures and events, we must attempt to bring them into the present, making them as tangible and immediate as things we can see and experience directly. This approach acknowledges the gap time creates and the effort required to bridge it for effective historical insight. Quote 74. Here we are not moving in a physical, but in a symbolic universe. The quote underscores the distinction between the natural sciences, which deal with the physical universe, and history, which operates within a symbolic universe. This distinction highlights that history deals not merely with empirical data, but with the meanings and interpretations attached to events and actions, which are conveyed through various cultural and historical symbols. Quote 75. History is included in the field of hermeneutics, not in that of natural science. This statement delineates history's methodological placement firmly within hermeneutics, the study of interpretation rather than natural science. It clarifies that the aim of historical study is to interpret and understand the meanings of human actions and events over time, rather than to explain them through scientific laws and phenomena, focusing on understanding over causation. Quote 76. If we were to know all the laws of nature, if we could apply to man all our statistical, economic, sociological rules, still this would not help us to see man in this special aspect and in his individual form. This quote argues that even a complete understanding of all natural laws and social rules would not fully enable us to grasp the full essence of individual human beings and their histories. It points to the limitations of natural sciences and quantitative methods in capturing the nuanced individual aspects of human life and culture, highlighting the unique contribution of historical inquiry. Quote 77. The category of meaning is not to be reduced to the category of being. Here, the emphasis is on the fundamental difference between understanding the existence of something, being, and grasping its significance or purpose, meaning. This distinction is crucial in historical studies, where the focus is not just on what happened, but on what the events and actions meant within their cultural and temporal contexts, aiming to understand the deeper layers beyond mere existence. Quote 78. Science is the last step in man's mental development, and it may be regarded as the highest and most characteristic attainment of human culture. This quote emphasizes the significance of science as a pinnacle achievement in human cultural and intellectual evolution. It positions science not just as a body of knowledge, but as a culmination of human learning and understanding, highlighting its role in the advanced stages of societal development and its impact on shaping modern thought and civilization. Quote 79. It is science that gives us the assurance of a constant world. Here, the quote reflects on the stabilizing effect science has on our perception of the universe. By establishing constants and laws, science provides a framework within which the chaotic and seemingly random events of nature can be understood and predicted, thus offering a foundation of stability in our interaction with the world. Quote 80. Man lived in an objective world long before he lived in a scientific world. This statement underscores the idea that the human experience of reality was structured and meaningful even before the advent of formal science. It suggests that humans have always sought to understand their environment and that the methods and systems developed through science are simply more refined tools for interpreting a world they have always engaged with. Quote 81. What science seeks in phenomena is much more than similarity. It is order. The focus here is on science's drive to discern order and structure in the natural world, beyond mere superficial resemblances or classifications. This pursuit of order underpins scientific inquiry, aiming to reveal the underlying principles that govern phenomena, thus providing a deeper and more comprehensive understanding of how the world operates. Quote 82. In the progress of numbers, we do not meet with an external limitation, with a last term. This quote captures the essence of mathematical infinity and the unbounded nature of numerical progression, highlighting the conceptual freedom this provides in scientific and mathematical reasoning. It illustrates the limitless potential for discovery and understanding within the framework of mathematical science, where each number is a point in a continuum without end. Quote 83. The world of human culture is not a mere aggregate of loose and detached facts. It seeks to understand these facts as a system, as an organic whole. This quote encapsulates the essence of a philosophical approach to culture, emphasizing that culture should not be viewed simply as a collection of random elements, but as an interconnected and coherent system. This perspective seeks to uncover the underlying relationships and structures that give cultural expressions their meaning and context, suggesting that every cultural artifact or practice is part of a larger, integrated tapestry. Quote 84. Man is no longer considered as a simple substance which exists in itself and is to be known by itself. His unity is conceived as a functional unity. Here, the focus is on understanding humanity not as a static entity, but as a dynamic and complex integration of various functions and capabilities. This approach shifts away from seeing humans as monolithic and unchanging towards viewing them as multifaceted beings whose identity and essence emerge through interactions within various social, cultural, and intellectual contexts. Quote 85. Men do not understand how that which is torn in different directions comes into accord with itself. Harmony in contrariety, as in the case of the bow and the lyre. This quote from Heraclitus is used to illustrate the concept that apparent contradictions and tensions within human culture can coexist and contribute to its depth and richness. Just as the tension in a bow or lyre creates harmony, so too can the diverse and seemingly conflicting aspects of culture interact to create a balanced and coherent whole. Quote 86. Sociability as such is not an exclusive characteristic of man, nor is it the privilege of man alone. This statement broadens the understanding of sociability, asserting that while humans are indeed social animals, they are not unique in this respect. Many species exhibit complex social behaviors, but what sets humans apart is their development of symbolic forms of communication, such as language, art, and religion, which create a richer, more complex social fabric. Quote 87. Man cannot live his life without expressing his life. The emphasis here is on the inherent need for expression in human life. This need to articulate and externalize inner experiences and thoughts through various forms such as language, art, and religion is not merely a way to communicate, but a fundamental aspect of what it means to be human. These expressions transcend individual existence and become part of a cultural continuum, influencing and shaping human society across generations. An essay on man by Ernst Cassirer serves as both a summary and a celebration of the human spirit's capacity to shape its world through symbolic activity. Throughout the text, Cassirer emphasizes the importance of symbols in defining human nature, asserting that the development of culture, whether through language, religion, art, or science, is a testament to humanity's unique ability to create meaning. He challenges readers to understand that human knowledge and progress are deeply connected to our symbolic functions, which ultimately make us capable of achieving a more profound understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
Curious to dive into the mind of Ernst Cassirer? With StudyLab Pro's book GPT, it's possible. Ask questions, explore themes, and discover the depths of An Essay on Man, an introduction to a philosophy of human culture, in an entirely new way. Start your conversation now by clicking on our logo. And if you're hungry for more educational content, subscribe to our channel to keep discovering, learning, and growing. Want more than just videos? Click on our logo now to join us on our platform for multiple choice tests, in-depth content, and tools to help you ace your studies. Get started now.